The morning they fired me, the city was silent, the kind of silence that feels like it's watching. I remember the smell of coffee cooling on my desk, the hum of the air conditioner, and the exact sound my heart made when Miles Wexler said, "You're finished here, Isla." He said it like a man signing a receipt, not realizing he was signing his own downfall. I smiled, even as my world cracked beneath me, because that's what smart women do. We bleed quietly, then rebuild louder than thunder. What Miles didn't know was that I built the very foundation he was standing on. Every number, every system, every secret. And when he pushed me out, he left me with something far more dangerous than power purpose. So this isn't the story of a woman who lost her job. It's the story of the woman who turned betrayal into a blueprint. My name is Dr. Isla Rowan Fairmont, and this is how I bought the company that tried to erase me. It happened on a Wednesday, the day I was supposed to be promoted. Instead, I sat across from Miles Wexler, the CEO of the company I had helped build from scratch. He leaned back, smirking slightly. "You're brilliant, Isla," he said. "But we need younger blood. Someone who fits the new image." Then he called in Tessa, a woman I had trained for 3 years, my own mentee, and handed her my title. I held my tears. I congratulated her. And when Miles smirked again and said, "It's just business," I smiled. "You're right," I said. And business always has a way of coming full circle. As I walked out, I overheard Miles whisper, "She'll never recover. She's too sentimental." He was wrong. I wasn't sentimental. I was patient. That night, as I packed my desk, I slipped a small flash drive into my purse. It contained copies of every financial report, every audit, every secret transaction I had ever processed. Miles thought he owned everything. He forgot I built the systems that tracked it all. I moved back to my one-bedroom apartment in Surrey, the one I hadn't lived in for years.
No furniture.
No power for the first night. I lit a candle, opened my old laptop, and stared at the financial records I had kept, the same numbers Miles thought I had deleted when he fired me. "If he thinks I'll beg," I whispered, "he's forgotten who built his empire." That night, I found something strange in the archived files. Offshore accounts tied to the company, registered under an unknown alias. The alias matched the name of a company Miles once claimed was shut down, Aurelius Holdings. My hands moved across the keyboard, tracing digital footprints through layers of corporate shells. Every transaction pointed to one truth. Miles had been stealing from his own company for years. And my signature, forged on dozens of documents, made me look complicit. My heart pounded. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a setup. If anyone discovered these accounts, I would be the one blamed. Miles had built his escape plan on my back. The next morning, I called an old friend, Elliot Traeger, a quiet data analyst I once helped out of a career scandal. He owed me a favor. He met me in a cafe, looked both ways before speaking, and said, "Aurelius isn't dead, Isla. It's a shell company. He's been siphoning money for years, through your reports." My hands tightened around my cup. That meant my name had been tied to every fraudulent transfer. Elliot slid an envelope across the table. "You didn't hear this from me," he said, "but someone inside wants to help you. She left this." Inside the envelope, a single card with 3 words. You were right. I stared at the card, my mind racing. Who inside the company would risk helping me? Who had access to information this sensitive? The handwriting was feminine, careful, almost apologetic. Then it hit me. There was only one person who could access Miles's private files now. Tessa. My replacement. The woman who took everything from me might be the only one who could help me take it all back. That night I met her. Tessa. The same woman who had taken my job. She looked pale, shaken, afraid. "I didn't know, Isla. He used me," she said, voice trembling. "He's transferring company funds abroad. If anyone finds out, he'll blame you." I wanted to hate her. I didn't. Instead, I asked her one question. "Are you ready to fix it?" She nodded. "I'll do whatever you say." Tessa opened her bag, pulled out a flash drive, and said, "This contains everything. His private ledgers, his fake contracts, and your name on every one of them. We sat in my dark apartment, the laptop screen casting blue light across our faces. She explained how Miles had manipulated her, promised her the world, then slowly revealed his true nature. He was planning to liquidate the company's assets, blame the missing funds on accounting errors under my watch, and disappear with millions. He told me you were bitter, Tessa whispered, that you'd try to sabotage him. He made me spy on his enemies list.
She paused.
You were number one. I spent nights studying the data. Every number, every signature, every email he had forged. By the fourth day, I knew how to destroy him, but that wasn't my goal. I wanted to own him. So I contacted a discreet investor group in Lagos I had once advised for free, men who remembered the woman who saved them from bankruptcy with one report. I'm not asking for charity, I told them. I'm offering a chance to buy a dying company and turn it into gold. They listened. They agreed. And quietly, we began buying shares in Vexler International one by one through proxies and blind accounts. By the time I looked at the company's board chart again, I smiled. I already owned 18%. And Miles didn't even know. The beauty of corporate warfare is its silence. While Miles celebrated his expansion plans at expensive restaurants, I was purchasing his empire piece by piece. Every share bought through shell companies. Every transaction untraceable. Every move calculated. He thought he had won by firing me. He didn't realize he had freed his most dangerous opponent. Weeks passed. My network of silent investors grew, mostly people who had been victims of Miles's greed. We moved quietly, methodically. Then one morning, Elliot called me. There's a problem, he said. Someone else is buying shares, just like you are. I traced the trail. It led to Aurelius Holdings, Miles's secret company. He was trying to strengthen his control before anyone noticed his crimes. We were in the same game, but I played it better. As I checked the list of shareholders again, I froze. One of the Aurelius accounts was registered under my late father's name, Dr. Charles Fairmont. My father had been dead for 5 years. Seeing his name on these documents felt like ice water in my veins. I called Elliot immediately. How long has this account been active? Since 1998, he replied. Your father's name has been on Vexler documents for over 2 decades. That meant Miles's corruption didn't start with him. It started with his father. And somehow, my father was involved. My father, Dr. Charles Fairmont, was once a quiet man of numbers, an accountant who taught me everything about integrity. But his name showing up in those fraudulent ledgers, it didn't make sense. I went to visit Aunt Lucille, the only living family I had left. She sighed deeply, her eyes full of something between fear and guilt. Isla, she said softly, your father didn't die in debt. He was forced out. Miles's father ruined him and used his name to cover his own theft. Aunt Lucille slid an envelope across the table, an old, faded photo of my father shaking hands with a young man. The man was Miles's father. Written on the back, for our daughters, may they never repeat our mistakes. My aunt's hands shook as she poured tea. Your father and Victor Vexler were partners once, best friends. They built that company together in the 80s. But Victor got greedy. He wanted more. When your father refused to help him hide money from investors, Victor destroyed him. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Your father died believing he failed you. He never knew you'd become exactly what he hoped, strong enough to finish what he started. That night, I sat alone, the city lights flickering through my window. I realized this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was generational justice. Miles thought this was a game of profit, but I understood something deeper. The loudest revenge isn't anger. It's silence, paired with precision. I called Tessa. We're changing the plan, I told her. We won't expose him yet. We'll let him dig deeper, until his pride becomes our evidence. The next morning, a company-wide memo went out. Miles had announced a massive expansion into a fake project, one funded entirely by Aurelius Holdings. He was about to use the same fake accounts, the ones I was already monitoring. I watched from my apartment as the news spread. Employees celebrated. Investors applauded. The media praised Miles as a visionary, but I knew the truth. Every naira he poured into that fake project was another nail in his coffin. He was building his own prison and I held the key. The company hosted a gala that month, a show of strength for investors. I went, uninvited but unnoticed, in a dark emerald dress that didn't need to announce wealth, just quiet power. As I stepped into the elevator, a man entered behind me. Tall, sharp suit, familiar air of arrogance. It was Miles. He didn't recognize me immediately. Then his face paled. "You," he whispered. "You shouldn't be here." And yet, I replied calmly, "Here I am, in the company I built." As the elevator doors opened, the head of the board stepped forward and smiled at me. "Dr. Fairmont," he said, "we've been expecting you." Miles's confusion was beautiful. He looked between me and the board chairman, his mind racing to connects that didn't make sense to him. "What is she doing here?" he demanded. The chairman smiled. "Ms. Fairmont is now one of our largest shareholders. Didn't you know?" I watched the color drain from Miles's face. He finally understood. The game had changed, and he was no longer winning. The next morning, the boardroom was silent. Miles sat at the head of the table, trying to appear composed. But the documents on the table told another story. Shareholder lists, silent acquisitions, and my name printed across them. "What is this?" he demanded. I smiled. A majority vote. One by one, investors raised their hands, voting in favor of a leadership change. The numbers were decisive. Miles had been outvoted. But I didn't take the CEO seat. I appointed Tessa instead, the very woman he had used against me. "I don't need to sit at the top," I told him. "I just needed to remind you who built the ladder." As security escorted him out, Miles turned back and hissed, "You think this is over? You don't know what I did to keep this company alive." And then he said something that froze my blood. "Ask your father." Those two words haunted me for days. What did Miles know about my father that I didn't? What secrets had been buried with the man who raised me? I needed answers, and there was only one place to find them. After Miles's words, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I visited my late father's old house in Ibadan, untouched for years. In his study, I found a locked drawer. The key was taped under the desk. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written to me, but never sent. They told a story I was never meant to read. How he had discovered Miles's father's crimes. How he had been blackmailed into silence. How he died trying to protect my mother from the fallout. "My silence was my guilt," he wrote. "Yours must be your redemption." At the bottom of the box lay a signed transfer deed, proof that my father once owned 20% of Vexler International and that it had been stolen before his death. I sat on the dusty floor of my father's study, reading letter after letter. He wrote about sleepless nights, about the weight of knowing the truth, but being powerless to speak it. He wrote about me, about hoping I would never have to fight the battles he lost. But most painfully, he wrote about his regret. "I should have been stronger," one letter read. "I should have fought. Now I would fight for both of us." That deed changed everything. It meant I wasn't just an outsider reclaiming justice. I was the rightful heir to a part of the empire Miles had stolen. I contacted Elliot and he verified the documents. "This deed was buried during the merger," he said. "If you claim it publicly, you'll control 42% of the company." I stared at the document, feeling both grief and strength course through me. "No," I said quietly. "I won't claim it yet. Not until he knows why he's losing it." Later that night, I received a message from an unknown number. "You're not the only Fairmont he betrayed." The message included an address in Victoria Garden City and a time. Nothing else. I should have been afraid. Instead, I felt curiosity. Someone else knew the truth. Someone else had been hurt by the Vexler family. Someone else was ready to help me finish this. I wrote down the address, grabbed my keys, and drove through the Lagos night. Whatever waited for me at that house would change everything. I could feel it. The message led me to a quiet house in Victoria Garden City. When the door opened, I froze. The woman standing there looked like me. Same eyes, same posture. Her name was Clara Fairmont. My mother told me about you, she said softly. We're half-sisters. Miles's father was my mother's employer and her mistake. She handed me a file. Inside were photos, letters, and a confession written by Miles's father before his death, admitting to destroying my father's reputation to protect his own. He didn't just steal your legacy, Clara said. He built his on your father's grave. I turned the last page and saw Miles's name signed beside his father's, approving the cover-up years later. We sat in Clara's living room, two women connected by blood and betrayal. She told me about her mother, a secretary who fell in love with the wrong man. About growing up knowing her father's name but never speaking it. About watching from the shadows as the Vexley empire grew on stolen foundations. I've been gathering evidence for 10 years, Clara said, waiting for someone strong enough to use it. She looked at me with something like hope. I think that someone is you. I spent days in silence. The world saw me as calm, but inside, I was fighting between justice and destruction. If I exposed the documents, the company would collapse. Thousands of innocent employees would lose their jobs. If I stayed quiet, the cycle of deceit would continue. I met Tessa on the rooftop of the corporate tower that once belonged to Miles. You don't need to burn him, she said. You've already outgrown him. She was right, but my heart still ached for truth. As I left the rooftop, I found Miles waiting at the exit, holding a folder. Before you ruin me, he said quietly, you should read what's in here. It's about your father and me. The folder was thin, but its contents were heavy. Medical bills from a private clinic in London. Treatment records for an experimental cancer therapy. All dated from 15 years ago. All paid for by Vexler International. Your father was dying, Miles said. We saved him. Bought him 5 more years. He made me promise never to tell you. I felt my world tilt. Everything I thought I knew was wrong. I opened the folder. Inside were medical reports, dated years ago. My father's illness, his treatment bills, all paid by Miles Vexler. He saved him, Miles said. But your father asked me to keep it secret. He wanted to die protecting your image of him. For the first time, I saw a flicker of humanity in the man I had hated. But his next words twisted the knife again. Your father begged me to look after you. I did, until you became a threat. I stepped closer, calm but cold. You didn't look after me, Miles. You tried to own me, and you finally learned I was never yours to own. He smiled faintly. Then take what's yours, he said, because I'm done running. He dropped the company's master keycard at my feet and walked away. I stood there holding that keycard, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Power, legacy, betrayal, truth. My father had made a deal with the devil to stay alive. And now I had to decide whether to honor that deal or break it. I chose to break it. Because some chains, no matter how they're forged, are meant to be shattered. When I arrived at Vexla headquarters the next morning, whispers followed me. Miles's resignation had leaked, but not the reason. The boardroom was packed, the air electric with curiosity. I stood before the 12 directors and calmly placed the deed, the letters, and my father's documents on the table. I'm not here to destroy Vexler, I said. I'm here to reclaim what was stolen and rebuild it with truth. One of the directors, Mr. Lang, sneered. Do you even own a share in this company? I slid the verified deed across to him. The silence that followed was almost holy. Then a voice from the back interrupted. You might own the shares, Dr. Fairmont, but the public doesn't trust a woman who rose through betrayal. It was Miles holding a press badge. He had called the media. This was no longer a private boardroom battle. This was public war. Cameras lined the walls. Reporters filled the back rows. Miles wanted to destroy me in front of the whole world. But he forgot one thing. I had spent 2 months preparing for this exact moment. And I never walked into battle without knowing I would win. That afternoon, he went live. A global press conference streamed from the same auditorium I had once managed quietly as an employee. Miles painted me as an opportunist, a grieving daughter manipulating history for gain. My hands trembled as I watched the broadcast, but I didn't react. I waited. At the perfect moment, I walked on stage. The cameras swung to me, startled. "You're right, Miles," I said. "I am my father's daughter, the man your family buried under forged contracts and lies." Then I revealed the audio confession Clara had uncovered, the one from his father's final days. The crowd gasped as the truth echoed through the hall. Miles stepped back, pale, and then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "You think this ends with me, Isla? You have no idea what you've just started." His words felt like a threat and a promise. But I didn't flinch. I had Clara's evidence. I had Elliot's data trails. I had Tessa's insider testimony. Most importantly, I had something Miles never understood. I had patience. And patience, when paired with preparation, becomes unstoppable force. For 2 days, chaos ruled the media. But amid the storm, I made my quiet move. Using my reclaimed shares, I announced a full restructuring. Half of Vexler International's profits would now fund the Fairmont Foundation, dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and women in tech. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. "My father lost his voice," I said in the official statement. "Mine will echo for both of us." But the night before the relaunch event, Elliot called. "We've found something else," he said. "A hidden account. Millions transferred from your father's trust to someone named E. Fairmont." My heart froze. E. Fairmont wasn't my father. It was my mother's name, Eleanor Fairmont. My mother, who died when I was 12. My mother, who I barely remembered. What role had she played in this decades-old conspiracy? I drove through empty Lagos streets at midnight, my mind spinning with possibilities. Nothing made sense anymore. Every answer revealed 10 new questions. Every truth uncovered another layer of deception. When I finally returned home, I found an old photo album I hadn't opened in years. My mother's handwriting in the margins. And suddenly I knew where to look. I returned to my childhood home. The walls still smelled faintly of jasmine and dust. Inside her wardrobe, beneath a false bottom, I found a sealed envelope. Her handwriting was shaky. "If you're reading this, Isla, then the truth finally found you. Miles wasn't your father's enemy at first. He was his student and his downfall." The letter revealed that my father had mentored Miles's father, trusting him like a son, until greed tore them apart. But worse, my mother had known. She had hidden the deed to protect me from inheriting a war. At the end of the letter, my mother wrote, "Miles's father had another secret heir, one he never claimed. If you've met her, protect her. She's yours by blood." She was talking about Clara. I sat in my mother's old room, surrounded by her things, and cried for the first time since this battle began. Not from sadness, but from understanding. My mother had known everything. She had hidden the truth to protect me. And now, 20 years after her death, her plan was finally unfolding. She had known I would be strong enough. She had believed in me before I believed in myself. When I met Clara again, she was trembling. "I didn't know, Isla. I swear," she said. But her eyes betrayed guilt. She confessed that she had helped Miles cover up some of the records in exchange for funding her mother's hospital bills. Her betrayal was the final fracture I hadn't expected. I took a deep breath, steady. "You chose survival," I told her. "Now choose truth." Together, we gathered every file, every hidden transfer, every silent wound this empire had inflicted, and prepared to expose it. On the morning of the official Vexler relaunch, I received a private message from Miles. It read, "If you open that presentation, Isla, someone you love won't make it home." For a moment, fear gripped me, then anger, then clarity. Miles was desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. And I was counting on that. I called the police, forwarded the threat, and contacted private security. Then I dressed in my mother's favorite color, deep blue, and headed to the presentation. Whatever Miles had planned, I would be ready. Because I wasn't fighting alone anymore. I had Clara. I had Tessa. I had Elliot. I had an army of people Miles had hurt, and together, we were unstoppable. Miles's message replayed in my mind all night. If you open that presentation, someone you love won't make it home. He knew my weak point. Not money, not status, but the people I protected. Elliot's number went straight to voicemail. Clara wasn't answering either. I arrived at Vexler headquarters anyway. Every step to the podium felt like walking through glass. The board waited, cameras live, the world tuned in.
Dr.
Fairmont. The launch presentation? I looked at the flash drive in my hand. Miles was somewhere watching. I plugged it in and said quietly, "You should have learned by now, Miles. I never start a fight I haven't already finished." The screens lit up, not with the presentation Miles expected, but with his own recordings. He had hired private security to track me for months, secretly tapped calls, and bribed directors to vote against me. The audience gasped as his voice filled the speakers. "We'll scare her enough to sell. No woman handles power that long." The feed switched to live security footage. Clara and Elliot walking safely out of a police van. I had already reported the threat the night before, and the police had intercepted Miles's men before dawn. The screens lit up with evidence I had been gathering for months. Bank transfers, forged signatures, audio recordings of Miles admitting to fraud. The audience sat in stunned silence as document after document. That key led me to a private storage vault registered under my mother's name. Inside were handwritten journals, contracts, and a photo. The applause wasn't loud. It was respectful. It was the sound of closure. Reporters asked me how it felt to win. I told them the truth. I didn't win. My parents did. I just finished what they started. That evening, Clara and I stood in the empty boardroom where everything had begun. "What happens now?" she asked. I looked at her, my sister, my ally. "Now we build something worth inheriting." Months later, I stood in my new office, looking out at the city that had watched me fall and rise. Clara joined the foundation as Director of Community Outreach. Tessa became CEO, just as I had promised. And me? I became the quiet force behind it all, the woman who learned that true power isn't in the spotlight. It's in the foundation you build when no one's watching. I opened my mother's journal one last time and read her final words. "Justice doesn't need applause, my darling. It just needs breath." And I finally understood. I had won. Not loudly, not violently, but completely. Miles served 3 years in prison before being released on parole. I heard he started a small consulting firm, helping businesses avoid the mistakes he made. Sometimes redemption comes in strange forms. I never spoke to him again. I didn't need to. The last time I visited my parents' graves, I brought flowers and the partnership document. "I finished it," I whispered. "Your fight is over. You can rest now." As I walked away, my phone buzzed. A message from a young woman I didn't know. "I saw your story. You gave me courage to report my boss. Thank you." I smiled. This was the real victory. Not the company, not the money, but the lives changed by choosing truth over silence. And that, I realized, was worth everything. Final words. "You know, when they fired me, I thought my life was ending. But sometimes, endings are just disguised beginnings." That I didn't destroy Miles. I destroyed what made him cruel, the lies he inherited. And in doing so, I found something more powerful than revenge: peace. If this story touched something in you, maybe it's time to remember your own worth. Don't let bitterness write your story, let wisdom do it instead. Before you go subscribe to this channel, drop your thoughts in the comments and tell me where you're watching from, because here, every story reminds us justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply smiles.